unadulterated truth. I am committed to delivering news without compromise. Hard facts as we know them, when we know them, and how they affect you. Every Monday through to Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. This will be your most authentic news experience starting now on 99.3 Nigeria Info. There's a reason why over 1 million people tune in Hard Facts every day. We discuss in-depth stories with sources behind facts.
The Lagos State High Court has suspended the Chicago certificate stories, leveling away the show with stories for the day.
You should diverse voice and opinion.
Yeah, 1% the way the coffee is going.
We distinguish each story accurately with analysis.
It's Facts with Maryann Okon on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
It's the nation's #1 talk news and sports radio station. We're broadcasting live from the audiovisual studios from Etemi and Crescent, Victoria Island, Lagos. My name is Maryann Okon, welcoming you to your most authentic news experience on the radio, Nigeria Info. Well, it's an abridged version of Hard Facts today, ladies and gentlemen. And as usual, today I did promise that we were going to be talking about the state of security in our country. And for many would think that we would have some sort of reprieve, when it comes to the level of insecurity that Nigeria has faced over the years. Because, of course, it's not necessarily a front burner issue as it should be. Many would think that, things are getting better. Unfortunately, they are not, because recently in the news we hear that there is an emergence of sorts of a new terror group. Not just that. A week ago, we realized, we rather also heard in the news that one of the biggest training facilities for the military was taken over or overrun by bandits. And that, of course, raises eyebrows. But away from that, let's also point to the fact that the level of insecurity in the South also has become alarming. A few days ago, a colleague of ours was on her way to work. She was kidnapped, she was robbed, and she was manhandled. Recently in Lagos also, we've heard of a number of cases of people being robbed in broad daylight. There's a video that's making the rounds. I'll try to play that video as we have a conversation today before I introduce my guest. Where travelers on an express from Enugu, if I'm not mistaken, well, I must say, I must salute the bravery of the person who was lying face flat and trying to record these bandits on the expressway, trying to rob and then kidnap some of these travelers. So we're talking about the roads not being safe, our streets within the cities not being safe. We're talking about the fact that our farmlands are also not safe. And this is a case that we've been talking about over and over again, which is also affecting food security. We're talking about the fact that if you do not have disposable income up to 250,000, you can't fly anywhere. So how do we move around? This brings it back to a front burner issue. But are we prioritizing it enough to have conversations about it? Well, I, on the other hand, thought that it was a great idea to have this conversation. And so my guest is the Managing Director, Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited. I've had several conversations with him over time about insecurity, and I'm so pleased to have him join us again today on Hard Facts, I think for the first time. Dr. Kabir Adamu is joining us via Zoom. It's so good to have you join us, Doctor. I don't think I've spoken to you this year, so Happy New Year, even though we're in November. Yeah.
Well, it's never too late. So Happy New Year to you. And yes, we haven't spoken in a while. The last time we spoke was on another platform. I'm delighted to be here.
Yes.
How is Lagos?
Lagos is great. We thank God. Let's start by statistics, because this program is Hard Facts, obviously. So we are going to make sure we start with statistics. I was doing my research and I realized that in Nigeria, for the past few, let's say in the year 2024, the level of insecurity, in fact, we're hearing that insecurity has impacted our economy at least 2.4% of the country's GDP, which is similar to government spending on health. We also hear that there are several factors that have contributed to terrorism in this country, which is political greed, foreign influence, religious extremism, proliferation of small arms and light weapons, and poor governance. And I don't think that these things are strange to us, Dr. Kabir. But the fact that we're still dealing with Boko Haram in the northeast, in the northwest, we're dealing with Boko Haram. With bandits. And now we have a new group of people, even though we hear a group of, I think one of those groups in the north is saying that they're not new, that they've been there. How does this make you feel for someone who's been on the radio, on television, on platforms, on different fora, speaking about what government needs to do about insecurity? And here we are in 2024, still having the same conversation. How does that make you feel?
A little bit sad. Frankly, not a little bit sad, actually. Sometimes I feel like a broken record. We know what we need to do, but yet we're not doing that. And I mean, just to give the listener the context of how sad this makes me feel, I think earlier this morning, we published our report for October 2024. Every month, we publish reports of the security situation in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. And these are based on facts. We have a database. Mm-hmm. We collect incidents that occur in the country. Mm-hmm. And I must say it's a painstaking process of collecting, verifying, because there's a lot of fake news out there. So we do verify. Mm-hmm. And where the report does not meet the standard, there's a standard. If it doesn't meet, we drop it. Mm-hmm. And so we add it to our database, and at the end of the period, we do an analysis, and then we create numbers. So just like you mentioned in your introduction, based on facts, nothing but facts. And I was a little bit shocked with what happened this month, or last month rather. For incidents, because first we record the incidents, we recorded a 24.42% increase in the number of incidents in just 1 month. That's month to month, from September to October. And that means in September, we recorded 692 incidents, but then in October, we recorded 861 incidents. Now, when we analyzed those incidents, they resulted in 1,545 fatalities. That is the highest we've recorded in almost a decade in 1 month.
Wow.
And what that meant is a 51% increase, 51.17% increase, because what we recorded in September was 1,022. Now, when it came to abduction, we recorded 971 abductions in the month of October. Okay. In September, it was 807. So that is a 20.32% increase in a rise in abduction. But what even worried us, Maryann, is we put the figures from the month of January to the last day of October, which is 31st of October, together. Mm-hmm. And so far, we are recording 12,026 fatalities within that period. The last time we recorded fatalities above 10,000 was in 2013. Wow. Now, if this trajectory sustains, 2024 is likely to be the year with the highest fatalities within a decade in Nigeria.
Wow.
For abduction, we recorded from January to October 8,257 abductions. Mm-hmm. Now, if this continues again, it's likely that 2024 would record the highest abductions in a decade in a year. So that worries me. That makes me extremely sad that in spite of all the promises, and I must say that the renewed hope agenda by the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration has hopes. There are elements within that manifesto that if they had been judiciously implemented in the manner that we had expected, maybe the statistics would have gone down instead of an increase in the manner that we're seeing at the moment. Now, going to your question, why are we seeing the emergence of perhaps a new terror group, which in reality is not actually, it's not a new terror group.
Okay.
As far back as, I think, 8 years back, or precisely, to be more precise, 6 years back, the community in Tangaza local government, which is in Sokoto state, did report to the police. And even for the most basic research, which is to just put that word on your Google search engine, it would give to you the report by the community, and then a report by the Nigerian police, where the Nigerian police said they had conducted an investigation and that they had discovered that that group, even though they are armed, are not malicious. They are just a group of herders who were moving around. In other words, the community should not be afraid that the group will not in any way be harmful to them. Now, it's likely that that was the situation at that time. But over time, we've recorded, and again, a simple search on your Google search engine, you will find out that there have been encounters between that group and our Nigerian security forces. The most recent was this year, the middle of this year, where they had an encounter with the Nigerian security forces and killed about 4 of them. So point I'm trying to make is they're not new. They are known to residents of this community, and at the point where the residents felt they were becoming radicalized, because that is the element, that is what we need to note, radicalization.
Yeah.
There are groups that are active everywhere, and as long as they are not radicalized, then they will not become violent. But we should have a procedure in place where we're able to take note of radicalization. And then the beauty of our situation, which is what makes me sad, Maryann, is that we do have at least 3 policy documents that we could have relied upon to disallow this from happening. The first one is our National Counterterrorism Strategy. It's a document that was published in 2016 that is meant to support our operations to deny terrorism from, growing within, imagine, and then growing within Nigeria. Now, under that strategy, a new office was created, which is the Coordinator of Counter-Terrorism, and is domiciled within the Office of the National Security Advisor. The second document is the PCVE document, the Policy Document on Countering Violent Extremism. That document was published in 2017, and the idea is that force alone cannot counter terrorism, which is the component in the National Counterterrorism Strategy, that we need other soft components. So the PCBE was published in 2017 with the hope that it would now put forward those soft approaches to counter the rising terrorism, as it were. And then the last of the 3 documents is our Terrorism Prohibition and Prevention Law, which was amended in 2022. And it defined what terrorism is. It also talked about who has the rights and the authority to designate any group a terrorist group. There is a sanctions committee, which is being chaired by the Attorney General of the Federation. And so anyone who, as a Nigerian, if I feel anyone is involved in terrorism, even if it's the military, if they feel anyone is on terrorism, they don't have the power to designate that person a terrorist. What they need to do is to now submit that person's name to the Attorney General, who will approach a competent court of jurisdiction. And then that competent court of jurisdiction will declare that that act is terroristic or not. So we do have those laws. And sadly, in my honest opinion, over time, from that 2016, when the first of the 3 laws was passed, what we have done is to concentrate our effort more on the northeast of the country, for obvious reasons, because of the Jamaat al-Ahlisina al-Dawat wal-Jihad, or otherwise called Boko Haram, and then the Islamic State in West Africa province, their activities. Now, if we had ample intelligence, we would have known that the Sahel region was a boiling point for terrorist groups. Mali happened. There were 2 coups d'etats in Mali as a result of security. Burkina Faso, the same thing. Niger, the same thing. And then, of course, about 7 states in northern Nigeria are within that Sahel zone. And the border area between the north and just one country, Niger, is over 1,000 kilometers, about 1,400 kilometers. And most of those borders areas are unmanned with very poor protection. So it was very easy for these groups that are operational within the Sahel zone to have crossed into Nigeria. And sadly, because we didn't take note and because we did not take preventive measures we are where we are today. And the underlying word is accountability. It was the underlying word yesterday. It is the underlying word. Yeah. Now, reports are everywhere that there is a new group called Lakurawa, but I have not heard anyone in government saying, let's put up a committee that would investigate who was supposed to prevent this from happening. And so that that person who dropped the ball and allowed this group to not only enter Nigeria, but to take hold and set up an administrative mechanism, more or less a state within a state, is flourishing. And yet we're not punishing anyone for that. This is the crux of the matter, and it's what make me start in direct response to your question.
Great. I want to play a video. I'm hoping that our digital guys can do that. Early this year, there was a young lady who was caught by some, I think, customs or immigration, I don't know, along security operatives in the north. And she was a middle young lady, maybe she'd be in her late 20s, thereabouts, with ammunition. She had bullets, thousands and thousands of these bullets. And she looked like someone who was going to the market or was coming from the market. So if you to the untrained eyes, it was just some things she was coming from the markets with. And she was pulled out from a bus. It's not about the ammunition. It's the reaction that we got from her. We're going to try to play that video. She had no remorse. She couldn't be bothered. She had the body language of, well, I couldn't care if everybody burned. I'm talking about responsibility now, because half the time when we talk about this issue of insecurity, we're always placing the buck at the table of the government. Yes, of course, it does have to. The buck stops at their table. But what about us in these communities who are mostly affected by this insecurity? Why is there not that level of responsibility to also check these kinds of people, our family members, our friends, who might be one way or the other radicalized by these guys? I have just 1 minute before we go on a break, but please.
Now, the answer is in those three documents or strategy documents that I talked about. The PCVE recognized that there is an equal space. So in terrorism, there are three players. There is the government, the authority, there is the terrorist, and then there is the audience. Now, we are the audience, you and I. And the two sides are actually competing for influence within the space of the audience. If the government does not take over the audience, then the bad guys will take over the audience. And any counterterrorism strategy that succeeds would have captured the audience, in this instance, captured Nigeria. And unfortunately, Maryann, we haven't conducted an M&E, an audit of our existing strategies to find out the gaps. But I can tell you as a player within the sector that even now, if we do a poll with your audience to see how many persons are aware of the National Counterterrorism Strategy, how many persons are aware of the PCVE, how many persons are aware of the provisions of the TPPAA law, I doubt if we get up to 10%. Meanwhile, the understanding of those persons who drafted the strategies and the law is that Nigerians will take ownership of those laws to the extent, in the PCV as an example, 24 components were identified, and it includes the media, because you are influence makers, the media. Yeah. If you understand the documents and you can put it out, then more people will know about it. But because our government, I think you probably said 1 minute.
We've got to go on a break. Let's just go on a break. When we come back, we'll address it more, because there's the issue of guns. A colleague of mine has done a big report where these guns are coming into the country. No one's accounting for it. So we'll be back after the break. It's still 99.3 Nigeria Info. This is Hard Facts. We'll be right back.
.3 Nigeria Info. We'll be right back. Lagos, get ready for a powerful year-end edition of The Round Table. This is where Nigeria's biggest radio voices, your favorite top OAPs on Nigeria Info FM, come together to dissect the most impactful stories of 2024.
The cost of electricity is going to make Nigerians more sick.
As much as the governor is saying that this is all about resource control.
You see, this public statement, of course, reflects the Nigerian mentality.
And so here we have a Nigeria where one day you speak about fuel price, the next day you must consider diesel.
Most of these governors are just there. They have no idea.
From seismic economic shifts to explosive social movements, nothing is off the table.
For 4 or 5 weeks, it was one bad story or the other.
You're beginning to wonder what's happening with government agencies. Who is ensuring that the individuals...
Why will the minister walk out of you? The same minister will resume to the same office the following day.
Join us for an intense conversation, bold insights, and moments that define this unforgettable year. The Round Table. Monday, November 25th at 9 a.m. It's the ultimate gathering of Nigeria's most influential voices, all bringing their sharpest takes on stories that matter. The Round Table. Don't miss this dramatic wrap-up on Nigeria Info FM, where 2024's biggest stories come to life. The Round Table. Let's talk. Street Foods Nigeria returns with a power package season focused on nutrition, hygiene, promotion of tourism, and cultural heritage of Nigeria. Watch regular street food vendors transform to becoming extraordinary food ambassadors that brings foreign direct investments under the mentorship of celebrity judges like Chef T, Diary of a Kitchen Lover, Okbayemi Famakin, the host with the most, Eniolua, and other guest judges. Catch Street Foods Nigeria on YouTube at Foodbay TV. Turn on your notification to be the first to see it. Street Foods Nigeria Season 5 is proudly brought to you by Foodbay TV in collaboration with Lagos State Ministry of Youth and Social Development. Championed by Golden Penny. Sponsored by Calypso. Refreshed by Mortina and Tiger Beer. Supported by Hospitality Business School, Prism Healthcare, and Palladium Farms.
99.3 Nigeria Info, your number one station for talk. Let's talk.
Millions of listeners trust us on Hard Facts. Whether it's politics, social issues, controversies, and trending stories, you know we're credible and objective.
It's Hard Facts with Maryann Okon on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
Yes, the program is Hard Facts, 99.3 Nigeria Info. Again, we're broadcasting live from our audiovisual studios right here in Itimian Crescent, Victoria Island, Lagos. And we are live, facebook.com/Nigeria Info FM. We're also live on YouTube, Nigeria Info FM. If you're listening from outside of the country, you want to be part of the conversation, we're on Skype at Nigeria Info FM. You can join the conversation on WhatsApp. It's 080-959-75 805, or better so you could join us via telephone. In the meantime, the phone lines are open, but we are still talking about the issue of insecurity. Don't forget, airlines are going to change the prices. In fact, I think it was Airpeace that put it in the news that they were going to have 100% increase for their flight tickets. So, of course, if your purchasing power is not high enough, you cannot fly. Now, how do you get on the roads if the roads are not safe? Even when you're going to work or going about your businesses, the cost of living is really high, through the roof, and the average person is barely surviving. But then, when these things happen, insecurity, of course, goes on the rise. And we're not just talking about terrorism, we're talking about even homegrown insecurity like normal robberies and burglaries. It's happening. Kidnapping is on the increase. And that's why my guest is here today to help us make sense of why this is not front and center for the Bola Tinubu administration. My guest is, of course, a security expert, and he is the Managing Director, Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited, Dr. Kabir Adamu. Now, Doctor, before we went on that break, we were talking about, of course, I've seen so many things this year that has made me question the issue of insecurity. A very good friend of mine and a very, very great investigative journalist put out a report recently about gun runners through customs. In fact, the customs were indicted. The police IG was indicted. And of course, this person who was also indicted by proxy indicted the presidency. Nothing has been said about that report. He went undercover to put out that report. And you talked about the porousness of our borders. And he wasn't even talking about the porous borders. He was talking about the fact that the areas where these borders were policed by our customs officials. Again, I think somewhere in River State, guns were intercepted. I have that video. It's going to be played now also for those who are watching on our live stream. Those guns look like real tactical weapons. I know a little bit about guns. And it's incredible how these kinds of guns continuously come into the country, and we have on paper, that we're trying to proliferate arms, or rather the proliferation of arms and small weapons. We keep talking about it, but nothing is being done. What exactly is it that we're lacking? And this is not just about the Tinubu administration, because governments have come and gone, whether it be the Jonathan administration, the Buhari administration. Here we are with the Tinubu administration. Why is it not front and center? Because again, why I'm asking this question that might sound very silly, there's also this thing that we do now. We just announced that 2,000 people died, 10 people were kidnapped, 10 people were killed. They're just now numbers. There's no human attachment to it. Is it because, of course, we've politicized the issue, or that nobody really cares? What exactly is it?
All right, so I think you've asked a lot of questions. Let me see how I can, unravel them and then answer them one after the other. Let me start from the last one. Why there's a fatigue regarding violence in Nigeria and fatalities. We've come to a point where, perhaps because of the constant barraging of news about deaths, people don't feel moved. I mean, we sometimes even feel more moved about deaths outside Nigeria than deaths in Nigeria. I can't remember the last time when any government, whether federal or state, declared, for the flag to fly at half-mast, or some form of recognition when people die. So it's something that has become institutionalized. Our political office holders would still travel, even when, in some instances, tens of, not up to thousands, but maybe up to 100 or thereabout people die. We've seen instances like that. So sadly, there is a fatigue around misfortune and fatalities in Nigeria. And I think for the sake of our humanity and for the sake of our grandchildren, we need to reverse that. I wouldn't want my grandkids to look back in history and say, during our time, we've accepted fatalities to a point where it doesn't move us any longer. We should still continue to speak about the fatalities. We should continue to condemn the reasons for those fatalities. Now, associated with that, also part of your question, we still don't have a national database of who we are. NIMSI, the last time I read from them, did indicate that at the moment, the density of registration that they have is only about 118 million, if I'm right. Now, if we agree that we're above 200 million, probably around 230 million, it means we are only about just half in terms of registration. Now, even those half are not properly documented. Now, if those fatalities were associated with names and in some instances faces, then maybe our emotions will be more if we can see the names and feel that these are individuals, these are brothers, these are fathers, these are mothers, these are sisters, these are kids of people who died, and their names and their pictures are displayed because we have a system in place that allows for that. And again, this cuts across the institutions of government, it cuts across our personal life, where we are unable to capture data, as it were, and then use that data for purposes of things like this. I'm not being political. This is a fact.
Yeah.
This is if we could see faces, if we could relate to those figures, then maybe we would be more emotional about it. The third point, which is also related to your question, is sadly the politicization of insecurity. And I would like to reference a speech by the WTO, I think DGA, the chief executive of the World Trade Organization, our very own Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, when she visited Nigeria recently and issued a speech when she talked about the weaponization of security. It is a fact. Security has been weaponized. It's been politicized. Earlier in this conversation, I reeled out figures to you. I'm in a very difficult situation. The opposition political, class would be happy that the situation is deteriorating. Sadly, you would never think that in Nigeria would.
Really?
Yes.
Why would we want to do that? Why would they? I mean, if we're all fighting for Nigeria's success, why would I be happy that people are dying under the watch of my, opponent?
because it becomes a weapon for them to use against the opponent. And what would even shock you, Maryann, if there are instances where insecurity challenges are actually facilitated, I'm using my word carefully, by the opposition political class in order to show that the ruling party is weak. And this cuts across because the ruling party at the center may be the opposition party at the state level. So when I say that, I'm not referring just at the federal level. I'm also referring at the state level. Now, for the ruling party, it will be unhappy because now an independent body is mentioning all of this. So it's a difficult situation for us. But because we are not political and we're doing it for the sake of Nigeria, and we're actually encouraging that the security forces actually do it, because it's a tool for security management. If you know where you're doing well, as an example, if you disaggregate the data that I've reeled out to you, you would see that more than 80% of the fatalities, the incidents, and the abductions happened in the northern part of the country. And just about less than 20% is in the southern half of the country. So that means your concentration in terms of preventing, stemming, and containing the violence should be in those locations. And then while you work on the other side, you should ensure it does not occur in the manner that it's occurring in the north. So it's a tool actually for security management. But where you don't have such a dashboard that allows you to see the country as a whole, to see where you're making progress and where you're not making progress, all you do is use your whims and caprices and sometimes even anecdotal conclusions to deploy. And that's why we're where we are at the moment. Now, in conclusion, also to answer your question, I talked about 3 policy documents that we have for countering terrorism. And these 3 documents have 5 major components, and I'll quickly reel them out. The forestall component, in other words, we should forestall terrorism in the first place. The second component is a secure component, secure all our communities. Section 14, subsection 2 of the Constitution mandates government to secure our communities, both our lives and our property. The third element is to identify potential terrorists. So if we had implemented the provisions, Lakurals would never have happened because it is contained in that document. And then the fifth one is to prevent. Sorry, the fourth one is to prevent. Now that prevent component would have allowed us to use intelligence. Maryann, there are 29 ministries, departments, and agencies that are directly involved in security. There's an additional 9 other MDAs that are indirectly involved in security. And every year, we make budgetary provision for them. If you count the number of persons who work in those locations, I'm talking of almost about 37 MDAs at the federal level. If you go down to the state level, there is no state at the moment that does not have some form of state security structure. So we do not lack security.
But yet we have zero intelligence gathering. We have zero. The intelligence that they gather is for little children who protested and has been termed as treasonous felons or something. I mean, how come? You just really played into my cause because I wanted to ask, how come it's very easy for government to gather intelligence that I probably am trying to unseat the president, but then we cannot gather intelligence to deal with the hydra-headed monster called terrorism in the country. And as you rightly said, there's some politics at play, but why play politics with the one thing that could destroy us as a country?
Recently, I had the opportunity to sit with more than 10 parliamentarians, and I told them a true story where cabinet members in Sudan were seen queuing up to collect rice ration in measures, like what we call in the north, the mudu.
Yes.
The situation has become so bad that they had to queue up. In Liberia, a military man has told me the story of a former cabinet member who had to sell his Mercedes-Benz to buy a bag of rice. And I looked at them in the eye and told them, if they don't wake up and change the trajectory that we are in Nigeria, my worry is that we are not immune to what happened in those countries. So I agree with you. And even though I do not think there is a failure of intelligence, what is lacking is the failure to act on the intelligence. I'm very aware that at least we have 3 major intelligence bodies in Nigeria, the DSS or SSS, as the case may be, the NIA and the DIA, and they're working hard. They do gather intelligence. What is unfortunate is that the intelligence they gather is usually not acted upon. And the reason is this, Maryann, at the risk of being controversial, I would say the coordinating element within the intelligence community that is supposed to coordinate the activities of all of these three agencies is more interested in operations. And so that element has left the coordination and is now carrying out operational tasks. And that's why you have the gaps that you have in the moment. So we need to wake up. We started this conversation by reminding ourselves of the need for accountability. And I'm still going to mention it. Accountability is the key. If we don't improve on accountability, if we don't have a system in place where we measure the performance of especially our security sector, so that at the end of a period, we see using data, whether there is an improvement or there is a reverse, then sadly, we would still be in this situation. Very recently, I think just a few weeks back, we were told that the president has assented to the bill for the creation of the small arms and light weapons department. Now, for a very long time, it has operated as a committee, as it were, and then, of course, an office under the Office of the National Security Advisor. And then just last month, I think we're told that the president has now assented. So there's going to be a center. And the beauty is that the center now has sub-regional units. It has created in each of the 6 geopolitical zones units to track these small arms and light weapons. So the question around the proliferation of small arms and light weapons is hopefully something that would be addressed. Our only worry is that what should have been is we should have had a commission and not a center, because there's an ECOWAS protocol that recommended a commission, and almost all the 14 member states of ECOWAS have that commission. We're the only one that didn't have. And now, instead of having the commission, what we have is a center. Now, administratively, there is a challenge there. If you have a center that is under an office that is constitutionally not exactly, an office that is I don't know how to explain this without being controversial, but the center is operating inside the Office of the National Security Advisor. If it was a commission, it would have operated independent.
Yes, independent.
Exactly. Now, because of that, its capabilities will be limited, and we need that center or commission to be fully operational so that it can liaise actively and freely with the UN, with ECOWAS, with AU and others. Our challenge is one of weaponization. And if we don't address that challenge, we'll continue to have conflicts. And if we now have a half-legged, weak, incapacitated center, then we're not addressing the challenge. The last point I would like to mention is the echo space within which terrorism operates. That woman, that video that you mentioned, that woman operates within that echo space. The cost of living crisis that we're living with today has made it very easy for terrorists to incentivize people. And that eco space has different players. Some of them support terrorism by providing, weapons for them, by providing ammunition, drugs, name them. And if before they needed, let's say, 100,000 naira to incentivize them, now because of the cost of living crisis, they just need 10,000 naira to incentivize them. So it's very difficult. The circumstances are dire, and we're not taking the right steps, as it were, to address them. And the steps are encapsulated in those 3 documents. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, Maryann. Okay. We just need to go back.
I want to bring Lagosians into this conversation because they're itching. They've been calling the whole time. They've got questions. They've got comments. Of course, I'm guessing that the last thing that you would have to tell us before we wrap up this conversation is, how do we stay safe? Because whether we like it or not, that we're on a slippery slope, and whether we like it or not, we're really nosediving. And if something is not done anytime soon, we might hit the rocks. So what do we do to stay safe and protect ourselves? That's the question that you would answer before we wrap up. But in the meantime, the phone lines are open. 0201-277-0993 if you're male. For the female, 0201-465-7190. You can join the conversation via Skype at Nigeria Info FM, or just post your comments on our live stream on Facebook and on YouTube. We would love to hear from you. 60 seconds is all you have. Hello, welcome to Hard Facts.
Hello, Maryann. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, my name is Peter Monse from Shomolu.
Go ahead.
Now, my question is this. Unfortunately, Nuru Ribadu recently said that some military or army, whatever, that they connive with terrorists, they sell arms to them. Was there any investigation? And we had a situation whereby a retired Major General, Dajuba, the other time, also accused the military of hobnobbing with the terrorists. And then we have a sitting governor in Zamfara fingering the past governor, Matawale. In all this mentioning, in all these allegations, have there been any constituted investigative whatever to investigate this thing, or we just mention them, accuse them? By the time you call it, they say it's a mere allegation. Have we got any investigation into this thing to know whether they are true? Because the situation whereby those that are supposed to fight terrorists are those nothing with the terrorists and being accused, and nothing is done.
Thank you, Peter. Your 60 seconds is over. Please let's just keep to time so we can give the guest ample opportunity to respond to our questions. Ugo is calling us from Ikpaja. Hello, Ugo.
Good afternoon, Maryann.
Yes, good afternoon.
May I agree with your guest in a way that opposition is happy seeing Nigeria going down because the party in power brought in this insecurity. They rode on it, becoming in power. That is what's happening. And that's why they were unable. And they look at what Peter Moza has been saying. He didn't even go half of what was happening. And a country, United Arab Emirates, have even given you a list of people that are sponsoring these terrorists. And since then, nobody have heard of it. The only thing you will do is to people that are hungry, children that are hungry, you because of your policies, you kidnap them, put them in prison, charge them for terrorism, and tomorrow you believe that Nigeria will be better. It's not true. It can never be better because they brought insecurity. These people brought insecurity. The people in government brought insecurity.
Okay, all right. Thank you for calling. Did they? You can't make those kind of allegations on national radio. Hello, welcome to Hard Facts.
Hello, Maryann.
Good afternoon. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Godman, yeah.
Godman, go ahead, please.
The last caller just said a little bit of what I want to say. The list that was given to them about terrorist sponsors, what have they done with it? Because that's just so easy. And I don't understand why you can't just pick the sponsors. When that is done, so I'm going to ask your guest, why have they not done that? Why have they not done after those people having the list? That's the solution in your hands. And then also, I want to, you invited, Maryann, you invited a guest the other day who was talking about this Islamization agenda.
Yeah, the retired Commodore, yes.
Yes, so I want to ask you, is this in line, all this terrorism, is it part of their plan for their agenda of Islamization? And then the government is, just like that guy talked about.
Okay. Thank you very much for calling. So we have a retired Commodore who came here and talked about, some agenda of sorts and a bill that was slid into, the National Assembly. But I'm also of the opinion that if it was about Islamization, the people who are dying mostly are Muslims. So what exactly is it? I mean, I don't know. It's just also a question I'm putting across to you, Doctor. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me start with that last point. It is also one of the triggers of insecurity in Nigeria, where people who are supposed to know better make, I would say, reckless statements. You're right. We are able to disaggregate the data, and we know that the victims of most of the conflicts, above 80%, of the fatalities are in the northern part of the country, and a significant number of that, above 50% of that, 80% are Muslims. And so it's painful for a Muslim to hear that someone is saying that there is an agenda to, as it were, Islamized, when people that are being killed are actually more Muslims. That theory kind of flies around, and I can assure you that I have never had any facts that supports that agenda. Anyone who believes that there is that agenda, I think the onus is on him to put forward evidence to show that the agenda does exist. Now, having said that, the two other questions, as far as I'm concerned, are revolving around accountability. We talked about it earlier on. Yes, the National Security Advisor did speak about security operatives who rent out their weapons, and in his words, they are worse than the terrorist or the criminal. But this is the catch, Mary Ellen. who has the responsibility to punish them? Who has the responsibility to fish them out? It's not you and I. And we are expected that after that statement, a follow-up statement from his office will come out to say, yes, we're aware, but these are the steps we're taking to identify and to punish the rogue elements within the military. Now, in security and in criminology, there are 2 steps that can be taken. Number 1 is pre-employment vetting. Every security organization should have a very strong pre-employment vetting mechanism. The second component is vetting post-employment. For the very high confidentiality departments within the security organization, those vetting can be within 3 months or 6 months. Subjected to that vetting again. You see it in movies where they subject them to routine questions. And if there is a red flag in those routine questions, the person is sent to another department and those red flags would mean maybe your account. All of a sudden, a deposit of $1 million is seen in an account of someone who earns 200,000 naira. So that's a red flag. Questions will be asked, and if the person is able to answer, oh, someone in my family died, and that it was that person that willed that $1 million to me, then of course the case is closed, and there is no continuation. But my point is, there is a need for that type of continuous vetting, and then the third component of it is our armory. The systems we have in place for safeguarding our weapons, for safeguarding confidential information. And you know this, if you just need to go to a beer parlor where SSS officers or military officers go to, and I'm sure if you want to know the health of our president or the chief of army staff, you would know from that beer parlor. So what happened to our counter-espionage and counter the other elements within our security structure are supposed to detect these things and prevent them from happening? So it's all about accountability, starting from those who should have responsibility for punishing the errant persons, and they are not doing it. The moment we strengthen accountability, some of these things will automatically take care of themselves.
I'm going to take one quick question on WhatsApp, and then we'll go on a very short break. When we come back, I feel like there are a few more people who have questions for you. But in the meantime, let me just read some messages on WhatsApp. Someone says, why doesn't our government decree a law that makes public singing to all Nigerians, if you kidnap, you die? I'm sure you mean public signing. To all Nigerians, if you kidnap, you die. If you rape, you die. If you're a bandit or Boko Haram, you're a terrorist, you die. If you kill, you die. You'll be made to face the wrath of the law. This is from Ifeanyi. Another person here says, the insecurity situation is worrisome and we can't overcome it because of bad leadership. This is from John in Lekki. Someone says, for a balanced perspective, does the report say how many victims have been rescued, how many terrorists have been killed? Why is the media always silent whenever the scores of terrorists are killed? The locals have always been part of the larger terrorism since 2 decades. The earlier they change their mentality of harboring these terrorists, the better. The FM, I would have been shocked once again if you said something different. But is it just about the media not reporting? The media reports. When the army says they've killed, we report it. But obviously, the media is the problem. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, my guest can take 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll be wrapping up. I Beg to Differ is coming up at the top of the hour at 4.
Credible journalism. Reach out to people and listen. Contact with Sean. The you have. Millions listen to Trump.
And more than video. So are you too? Check out your face. I'm 9.3.